blockchain is broader than Bitcoin. My name is Michael Bahar. I'm a partner in the Washington, D.C. office, and I co-lead our global cybersecurity and data privacy practice. With me today is Al Sand from New York. And when we counsel clients on this revolutionary technology known as blockchain, we make 5 key points. One of them is what I just said, is that blockchain is different than cryptocurrencies. In fact, it's about the underlying technology and its uses.
Yeah, absolutely. So Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, those are things that are more likely that you've heard of, are in the news. Maybe you have friends who are investing in them. Those are really early use cases. Those are some of the first things out there, but that's not the only reason that people are excited about it or that it's supposed to impact really sectors across the board. It's about that underlying technology, this underlying architecture that really is a new way of doing things and potentially allows you entirely new opportunities, right? This distributed ledger technology.
Right. And distributed ledger technology is complicated, right? It's very complicated, but it's also really critical for in-house lawyers not to cede this space to the technologists, to the engineers, and to the business folks. Lawyers need to have a seat at the table at the design phase. They need to ask questions. They need to make sure they get answers in plain English. They need to help in the strategy understand the rapidly evolving regulatory environment because those are costs. You know, there's a great phrase that one of our partners in the UK uses. He says, know your tech. And I think that's really important lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're used to KYC. Adding KYT to the list is really important. And that really feeds into the third point that we often talk about, right? That technology is never going to be a panacea. There is no one technology, no matter how buzzy, like blockchain, that's going to solve all of your problems. Maybe it's going to solve some of your problems. It's going to create new issues, new risks that you need to understand and manage accordingly.
Right. And that's why not only in-house counsel have to ask questions, but boards have to be involved. They have to ask those questions and make sure they're getting answers that make sense. That's what the regulator is going to look for,
yeah,
and that's a really important point. Another thing that they have to be really conscious of, it cannot be all about efficiency, right? There are some real value in having stopgaps, some moments of pause, because otherwise things could happen really quickly. Or the immutability, the historical record of blockchain itself could be problematic. Do you want to talk about that quickly in the credit card context, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. So a good way to think about some of the possible issues and differences that you need to think through in this, right, is the difference between maybe what customer and business and regulatory expectations around like a credit card payment transaction are versus a blockchain transaction. So part of what gives blockchain value, why it can do things that we couldn't otherwise before, is it has this feature of being immutable. So once a transaction goes on there, it can't be undone. Everybody can see it. Everyone can realize it's there. Now in the credit card context, if there's fraud, there's some sort of mistake, you can undo the transaction. You can make it as if it never happened, and that's a really important value to the business. That's why people like credit cards. Right. But if you can't do that, suddenly that raises all sorts of new issues in terms of what are your requirements and expectations for regulators, as well as from the business perspective of your customers.
Right, and we spent a lot of time talking about the challenges and spotting the issues inherent in this revolutionary technology. But despite these challenges, I think the 5th key point that we need to emphasize, and we do emphasize, is you cannot underestimate the revolutionary potential. I mean, it's coming, right? And there are many really valuable uses, some of which even the lawyers themselves can be in a position to say, hey, we can solve our regulatory problems using distributed ledger technology. Cybersecurity, for example, right? It helps against the data manipulation threat that we've talked about in other videos, having that immutable ledger.
Yeah, absolutely. Data integrity is one of these things that blockchain offers that really is potentially a new solution that was really hard to do with other ways of doing things. And so it really is important not to underestimate the long-term potential impact. We generally tend to underestimate that just as people while overestimating short-term. So as we're working through this, where does it make sense? What are we doing? It's important to keep that context of I can't ignore this because there really is good reasons that people are excited about it, but let's be realistic and keep perspective in that process.
So plenty more to talk about, but if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to contact either one of us or visit us on the web at www.eversheds-sutherland.com.